Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News. Time for the week that was. And let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. We begin in Ghana, where President Nana Akufo-Addo has been declared winner of the presidential election in the country, having secured more than 50% of the total ballot cast. His main challenger and former President John Mahama was able to garner just over 47% of the vote. And the Rise senior correspondent Akufo-Addo has more.
And the city of Accra erupts in wild jubilation following the declaration of the NPP candidate incumbent President Nana Akufo-Addo as the winner of Ghana's presidential election by the Electoral Commission in the country a few moments ago. The supporters have trooped to the street, and one of them is just coming to me to tell me how excited.
I'm in Ghana.
What does this victory mean to you?
Yeah, I know like for much. I'm Ghanaian. I'm
What does this victory mean to you?
It means a great thing to me. I am so happy. I don't even know how to express myself.
And what are you expecting moving forward from the newly elected president?
I am expecting more from Nana Akufo-Addo because whatever he has done 4 years ago means he can do more for Ghanaians. So we should expect nothing but the best from Nana Akufo-Addo. That is what I can say.
Do you want to tell me what you are what is going on in your mind now that your candidate has won?
I'm so happy because as a single mother, I don't have someone who supports my children. And now my child go for free research and free university. I'm so happy because he's coming to do more. He has reduced the stress of mothers. We are so happy. Thank him so much. God richly bless.
excited. I'm so excited.
I'm totally excited.
We are excited.
We are going to do it 4 and do it 2024 again.
We're going to give them 4 more. They should give us 4 more years. We want to do more for them. Nanado has done so marvelously well in the past 4 years. We just asked them to give us 4 more. And trust me, the next 4 is going to be bigger than before.
So what does this victory represent to you as a Ghanaian, especially?
As a Ghanaian, it makes me proud. It makes me know that when one has a zeal to do something, you can do it. When you look forward to doing something, you should be able to do it and you can do it. It's giving us the encouragement that when you set your eyes on something, you're going to do it and you'll do it better.
The man on the car, I see you're sweating all over because your candidate that you voted for has won this election. Tell me, what is going on in your mind right now?
I am so excited, so happy, and so proud to be a Ghanaian, voting for my president, Nana Akufo-Addo, the one and only president who can do Ghana better. No one apart from Akufo-Addo. And the next person that will come 2024 is going to rise Ghana to the highest top. So everybody should watch out for MPP. This year and the years coming, it is our year. It is a good life. It's a good life.
Feel okay. I think that Nana will do better. He will do more. For more to do more. He can do more.
So you
can do everything more.
So you think there are better days ahead?
Yes, it's better for me. It's better for me.
Supporters, excited supporters who have trooped to the street across the city, the length and breadth of the city of Accra, celebrating the victory of their candidate who they came out to elect on Monday, 48 hours after he has been declared winner of that election. And the excitement is turbocharged, like we see all across the city.
We are so excited.
It is not the same in the camp of the opposition party, where some of the supporters have been out protesting the result. But for these people, the celebration goes very deep into the night and even to the next day as they continue to celebrate the victory, the victory of their candidate, incumbent President Addo, in the just concluded election. Tokunbo Oyetuji, Arise News, Accra.
I am deeply humbled again by your show of confidence, and I do not take this lightly. There could be that tendency for an incumbent president who has just secured a second term in office to, as it were, take it easy and relax because there's nothing more to lose or prove. I I'm of a different character. Just as I've been doing since January 2017, I give you my word that I will continue to work very hard to build the prosperous and progressive Ghana for which we yearn. The decisive margin of victory in this election constitutes for me an endorsement of the policies and programs initiated by my government and put before the electorate. And I'm determined to do all in my power to accomplish the tasks of this new mandate and thereby justify the confidence reposed in me. I assure you, fellow Ghanaians, that I'll do my best not to let you down. The period for campaigning is over, and the outcome of the election has been decided. The Ghanaian people, through the results, have made it loud and clear that the two parties, the MPP and NDC, must work together, especially in Parliament, for the good of the country.
Well, meanwhile, Ghana's opposition candidate John Mahama on Thursday rejected the results of the country's presidential and parliamentary elections, calling it fraudulent.
My brothers and sisters, I know dark moments like these can make us question our resolve and confidence in the promise and potential of Ghana and our democracy and its institutions. But I choose to be a determined optimist based on my personal articles of faith formed by long service to my country, including service in the high office of president. I urge you all to keep your confidence in Ghana and keep betting on the success of our democracy. This is a test of our ability within this democratic system to rise to the occasion and seek redress, to right all wrongs, to seek justice, to make every vote count, and to respect the sovereign will of the people. And let us not fail this test. Let history look back and be proud of how we united and stood up to fight for the people's fundamental rights to freely elect their leaders, devoid of crude political manipulation. And it is for this reason that my colleagues and I in the NDC will not accept what we know to be a fraudulent outcome of these elections. And we will take all legitimate steps to reverse this travesty of justice. Finally, let me assure our teeming supporters and the millions of Ghanaians who voted for change, the change which has been stolen, in a real stolen verdict, that we are beefing up capacity in the constituencies where the ruling MPP is seeking to overturn our parliamentary victories already chalked. We're also deploying additional crack teams of lawyers and senior party officials to support these constituencies that are under siege. Also, in order not to leave any further infractions unaccounted for, the NDC will continue its meticulous audit of all the presidential pink sheets to ensure that the verdict of the people is upheld. These steps will surely lead to our next line of actions within the constraints of our democratic governance process, and all legitimate options are on the table. We want to send a caution to the EC that in line with Regulation 47 of CI 127, they should ensure that the election data is preserved for 1 year after elections. Let me assure you, my dear voter, that your vote will count. It is said that the voice of the people is the voice of God. And so let us go forth, knowing that God is on our side. And if God be for us, who can be against us?
Here's the thing, when it comes to politics, especially presidential or parliamentary, but definitely presidential ones, there are lots of emotions at stake. Everything is at stake, really, because you're fighting for the highest office in the land. And where you have quite a close call. I mean, we can't say that the incumbent candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo, blew Mahama out of the water. It was quite close. So any types of calls for doubt are reasonable. But I think when you discuss this against the backdrop of what we've just seen in the United States, where it's very difficult for that president to accept the results of the election, especially because it was not in his favor, you kind of feel a bit uncomfortable with whether or not you feel as though politicians are becoming more vocal and don't see their office that they're fighting for in terms of an election as one for the people. Even though he was quite gentle in his rhetoric, Mahama, there, it did feel as though he was coming from a place of, I have been wronged. This election was not free and fair, and we're going to do something about it. And I don't know how far he could go to substantiate those claims and distance himself from other presidents who don't take the outcome of the ballot as gospel.
So we are saying that there are no perfect elections anywhere in the US, in Africa. This sounds very, very familiar. Yes. It's like the norm rather than the exception here. When you look at even the elections in Nigeria, in Ghana, but a lot of people had said, Ghana had been sort of like the poster child when it comes to election in the sub-region, very calm, very collected. And you see a testament to that to an extent in even this 2020 election, where even the ECOWAS Observer Mission, headed by former Liberian President Sirleaf Johnson, says this was a good election, but there were gaps. There's always room for improvement. We do know there were 61 incidents, as Tokunbo Itunju, who's on ground, had told us during the course of the week. 19 people were injured. Unfortunately, 5 people had to die. 5 people losing their lives to civic responsibility. I think that is something that is painful. That's something that is hard to hear again and again for elections. So that's the problem. John Mahama says his party has enough evidence to prove that they won this election. He's also accusing the Electoral Commission of colluding with the incumbent president, who was also a candidate in this election. And he sort of contrasted this with what happened 4 years ago when he was the incumbent and he lost to Akufo-Addo, and said, that was more democratic. I took the high road, and I just let go because I understood that this was about the people and not about me. So again, we are seeing those who might be putting personal ambition above the will of the people. But again, elections, like you said, absolutely, you have to prove your case. He who alleges must prove. We'll wait to see.
Exactly. We'll be following it regardless. Moving on, the federal government has asked COVID-19 treatment centres across the country to prepare for reopening on fears that the country could be on the verge of a second wave of the pandemic. Some of the centres were shut after the country recorded a decline in cases. Speaking at the briefing of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 yesterday, the Minister of Health, Dr. Osagie Ehanire, said that he had directed healthcare workers to be on red alert. In his words, and we quote, "We are seeing the increase in the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the last few days, which we have frequently alluded to in recent times. This rightly suggests that we may just be on the verge of a second wave of this pandemic." Well, last week, we recorded 1,843 against 1,235 2 weeks before that, and 1,126 the week before that. End of quote. Here's the thing. We've been seeing second waves in many areas of the world. United Kingdom just came out of a second lockdown. The United States is still very much in the thick of its war against this pandemic. And here in Nigeria, and indeed across the West African region, there's definitely rhetoric of a second wave. What does this mean for people? For us here in Lagos, it's one of two things. Are we going to have another lockdown? And if so, how long is it going to last? Are we not going to have a lockdown? And if so, how are we going to protect ourselves? I think the longer we've been in the throes of this pandemic, people's education to the virus has definitely inevitably increased, but perhaps your fear of it may naturally decrease over time. As much as we know that it can be deadly and people have been recovering from it, it does seem as though maybe people aren't as fearful as they should be.
Critical questions you've asked there, and I do not envy governments anywhere in the world, including here in Nigeria. Femi, we recorded 796 cases yesterday alone. And, testament to this, we now have currently 2 governors in Nigeria who have had to go into self-isolation. Governor Sanwo-Olu of Lagos announced yesterday that he had been exposed to someone who got infected. And barely hours after that, we got news that Governor Nasiru El-Rufai of Kaduna State has also had to go into self-isolation. You recall that Governor Nasiru El-Rufai tested positive in the first wave in Nigeria, so it's not new to him, but thankfully, I mean, he's in isolation. We don't know what their status is. In the course of the week, the Presidential Task Force did blame religious gatherings, large gatherings, for the numbers we're seeing. The minister also said this can be attributed to a lot of community transmission, as well as those returning back to the country. But then there's the question, you're supposed to have a test, a valid negative test for you to arrive in Nigeria, and then conduct another test between 7 and 14 days. So what exactly is going on there? I think the pointer here is that we have all let down our guards. I mean, you go out, you don't see people wear face masks, you see gatherings. The parties are back. They are back. It's December, so everybody needs to sit up. There needs to be more enforcement. And I think, again, you're right. The education is there. People are aware. They just don't feel. You hear people say, there's no corona. I mean...
there's corona.
There is corona. It is very real. It is very real, and you do not want to have an encounter with the virus because, again, you are not sure. Even if you're so certain about yourself, you don't know who has a compromised respiratory or immune system around you. You do not want to be... The worst Christmas gift you can give anyone is COVID-19.
Literally, I mean, could you imagine opening a box full of COVID? Like, goodness gracious.
Nobody wants to do that.
Nobody wants to do that. Go ahead.
Okay. So our next story, a day before his commitment to honor an invitation by the House of Representatives to address lawmakers on what his administration is doing to combat rising insecurity, President Muhammadu Buhari walked back on his promise, following a statement by the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, stating that the Constitution does not confer the power to summon the President on the National Assembly. The minister's position has drawn different reactions from a cross-section of Nigerians, including that of Deputy President of the Senate, Ovie Omo-Agege, who supports the minister, while the House Minority Caucus on lawyers differed. In spite of this development, House of Representatives spokesperson Honorable Ben Kalu told our sister outfit this day that the lawmakers were still expecting the president to fulfill his promise to appear before them today. The summoning of the president followed the consideration of a motion on December 1st, moved by Honorable Satomi Ahmed on behalf of 10 other Borno State federal lawmakers to summon President Buhari and to, amongst other things, declare a state of emergency on some areas to tackle the worsening insecurity. Femi?
Yes.
When that motion was moved, a lot of people concluded this was an empty call. They simply did not see or foresee how the president would honor such an invitation. But then they came to the surprise that, the president would actually honor the invitation. And this was confirmed by even his special assistant on new media, who tweeted it. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, also said, I went to see the president, he would come. Yes. And then a day before, we hear the president is not going to come because his party says, his sibling cannot come. The AGF says this is a constitutional matter. The president cannot, the lawmakers do not have the right to invite the president.
Here's the issue with that. It's almost peripheral fodder. That isn't the crux of the issue. The crux of the issue is we're facing unprecedented times in terms of our level of insecurity in specific parts of our country. So much so that we're calling out of the blue, perhaps not even out of the blue, but doing something out of the ordinary by inviting the president to address Nigerians through us and tell us what's going on. We've been having these conversations even on our own platform here. Are these service chiefs punching above their weight? Have they gone past the level of attainment that they can give to us in terms of this fight? So to have the president agree to show face was major. And as you said, I don't think many people expected that he would do so. So again, the day before he was supposed to do it, to make such an abrupt U-turn, it almost underscores the issue itself. The fact that it doesn't feel as though enough people are taking this seriously. And while we can accept that there are sensitive issues at hand, there is a level of intelligence that you might not want to make public record. However, this would have been the perfect time for the president to address the people and say, please trust me, I'm working on it. I haven't forgotten. It is very important to all of us. So it is disappointing, to say the least.
A missed opportunity, some would say. And perhaps this also gives credence to those who are making the call for a review of the Constitution, a Constitution that is truly by the people and for the people, a Constitution that makes political office holders accountable, such as the president. Because, again, this is somewhat about accountability. For the president to come to the National Assembly and speak with the lawmakers who, in actual sense, are all representatives of the people, including the president himself. Because he was, elected by the people. Absolutely. To find a solution to this monster of insecurity. So, again,
it's a shame.
There we have it.
It's a shame. But it's time for us to take a very short break. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's time now to look at the global COVID-19 updates. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has said that the COVID-19 pandemic was a crisis like no other and criticized the lack of a joint response from governments to this global threat. He warned COVID-19 vaccines should not suffer the same disjointed response and must be considered a global public good. Guterres was speaking during an online event in connection with the Nobel Prize celebrations, a day after the World Food Programme had been awarded the 2020 Peace Prize for its efforts to combat hunger. The head of the World Food Programme, David Beasley, said the number of people on the brink of starvation has risen from 135 million people to 270 million people this past year alone. He went on to praise the Norwegian Nobel Institute for highlighting the importance of food in solving issues related to international peace and stability, adding the hardest work lies ahead in 2021. Let's take a listen.
The pandemic is a crisis like no other, in which the world faces a common enemy. Unfortunately, governments have not mounted a joint response to this global threat. From the start, the World Health Organization provided factual information and scientific guidance that should have been the basis for coordinated global action. But the response has been fragmented and chaotic, with countries, regions, and even cities competing against each other for essential supplies and frontline workers. We cannot let the same thing happen for access to new COVID-19 vaccines, which must be a global public good.
You can only imagine when COVID hit and the supply chain disruptions, when westernized, very modern countries like the United States and European nations were having trouble just getting toilet paper. If that's happening in some of the most sophisticated supply chain systems in the world, you can imagine what would be happening in Niger or Mali or Burkina Faso. So it has really had a dramatic impact in multiple ways. First and foremost, it created an economic ripple effect and supply chain disruption that really has created chaos and disruption in so many ways. In fact, the number of people on the brink of starvation right before COVID was right at 135 million people. That number has spiked to 270 million people. When you cut on the TV and the news in the last 3 or 4 years, it's either Trump, 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 or Brexit, Brexit, Brexit. And there's been very little coverage with regards to the wars, the conflicts, the destabilization, the hunger issues that are facing dozens of countries around the world. And so what the Nobel Peace Prize Committee has done is, I think, 2 very significant, powerful things. And one is saying thank you to the women and men at the World Food Program for what you're doing and risking your lives, putting your lives on the line every day to bring peace and stability and help solve hunger, give the security and stability that are needed in many fragile nations, number one. Number two, our hardest work is really right ahead of us in 2021. And it's a call to action that if we don't act, it's going to cost the world, I think, in this catastrophic ways. But if we get ahead of the curve, we can avoid famine, we can avoid destabilization of nations, and we can avoid mass migration.
And to our next story now, the head of the World Health Organization has called on the international community to help fund the distribution of coronavirus vaccines to every country in the world that requires it. Speaking in Geneva, Tedros Ghebreyesus said his organization needed at least $4.3 billion to buy vaccines for the neediest countries.
To have safe and effective vaccines against a virus that was completely unknown to us only a year ago is an astounding scientific achievement. But an ever greater achievement would be to ensure all countries enjoy the benefits of science equitably. We face an immediate funding gap of $4.3 billion to procure vaccines for the most needy countries. I urge donors to fill this gap quickly so that vaccines can be secured, lives can be saved, and a truly global economic recovery is accelerated. We have worked hard to secure political commitment from world leaders for equitable access to vaccines, but we would like to see that commitment being translated into action. WHO is working with Gavi and UNICEF to evaluate the first set of requests received from countries who are eligible for assistance through the COVAX facility. Addressing the financing gap is an urgent priority. We have all seen images of people being vaccinated against COVID-19. We want to see the same images all over the world. And that will be a true sign of solidarity. The festive season is a time to relax and to celebrate. But we must not relax our guard. Celebration can very quickly turn to sadness if we fail to take the right precautions. As you prepare to celebrate over the coming weeks, please consider your plans carefully. If you live in an area with high transmission, please take every precaution to keep yourselves and others safe. That could be the best gift you could give. The gift of health, life, love, joy, and hope.
There's definitely a lot to think about there in what he said. Definitely as we approach the end of the year, definitely the festive period in a lot of different countries, there is a definite desire for people to want to travel, perhaps go home and see their families, because it's tradition. And I think when you've had a year like 2020, you'd like to think when you reach the final stretch of December, you can understand why people would want to spend some time. But as he said, it is wise to keep yourself safe and understand that this is temporary. Missing out on something is temporary, and it is for the greater good.
And I cannot say this enough, Femi. The worst gift to give anybody at Christmas is COVID-19.
This is it. This is it. Sneaks up on you. Well, moving on, President-elect Joe Biden says the American public should have confidence in a coronavirus vaccine that may soon begin to become available. Biden lamented the fact this week saw more than 3,000 deaths in one single day, saying the U.S. was seeing more deaths than from the 9/11 terror attack or at Pearl Harbor. Well, Biden said during remarks in Wilmington that combating the pandemic is serious business that requires presidential leadership. Oof, shade.
I want to say a few words about the COVID crisis. This week marked another tragic milestone in our fight against COVID-19. More than 3,000 deaths in one single day, the highest single death count during this pandemic. That's more deaths in a single day than we saw on 9/11 or at Pearl Harbor. This is serious business. And the current director of the CDC said yesterday, we can expect similar numbers of deaths or more every single day for the next 60 to 90 days. We're in the teeth of a crisis right now. And this nation needs presidential leadership right now. Presidential leadership that is willing to model the steps we should be taking to save our own lives and lives of our families. You know, we can wish this away, But we have to face it head on. We have to take it head on. Using every power available to me as president, we'll have a national coordinated strategy that will beat this virus. You know, and as tough as things are now, I firmly believe better days are ahead. We've got some good news yesterday. The FDA committee, recommended emergency use authorization for Pfizer's BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. But we're grateful for the scientists at these, not only there, but other great organizations, researchers who developed this vaccine and several others on the way. And we're just as grateful to the scientists and the public experts who evaluated its safety and efficiency free from political influence. I want to make it clear to the public, you should have confidence in this. There is no political influence. These are first-rate scientists taking their time looking at all of the elements that need to be looked at. Scientific integrity led us to this point. We know the immense challenges and hard work ahead. Earlier this week, I announced our COVID response team that will scale up the manufacturing, distribution, and injection of the vaccine. We set a bold and doable challenge in my first 100 days. 100 million shots in 100 days. Asking the American people to wear masks for the first 100 days of our administration. And if we get the necessary funding from Congress, we can get most of our schools open in 100 days, but we need the help from the Congress and the funding. The first 100 days won't end the COVID-19, but meeting those goals can slow the spread, save lives, and get us back to our lives with the people we love the most. And we'll also be getting the right people confirmed during this period of time and in place to manage this robust, aggressive plan to contain the virus, help us build back better than ever, and make sure everyone is included.
America in need of a presidential leadership? Touche.
I mean, you know, one thing that was interesting in what Biden said there was that he wants people to have confidence in the vaccine. And I mean, we're journalists here, but as human beings in our own lives, you can imagine and you can relate to people feeling a little reluctant to rush towards this vaccine.
Yes.
Are we in the middle of a pandemic? Yes. Do people want it to go away? Absolutely. But still, injecting yourself with this vaccine that has been put together quite quickly, that we don't know what the long-term ramifications are, would rub people the wrong way. However, you know, social media itself can be quite useful. Let me just say that. It
has a good side.
Right, it does have its good sides. And I remember coming across this page where it talks about the fact that people need to put this information in context. So, yes, has it been developed quite quickly? Has it been made available to countries like the UK quite quickly? Yes, but that is because there is a huge demand and need for it. And because this is a global issue, the usual barriers that drug makers would face when they want to bring a vaccine or something like this to the market, so much testing, so much approval, it's because you have to prove that there's, I'd imagine, a public need for it.
Yes.
That isn't really the case here with COVID-19 because everybody is clamoring, oh, absolutely, we'll give you these approvals, we'll allow you to put this together. So where people have some fears about it being put together quite quickly, that should be a good thing.
Yes,
because you know it shows how important it is. And then we're talking about the long-term ramifications. It is very unlikely, and I'm not caping for this vaccine because I haven't taken it. But it's very unlikely from what this page said that people would find themselves convulsing at the mouth or having any type of issues with this. So I think it's good to get as much information as it can. Once we do get to a point where the vaccine itself is made public, of course the choice is up to people. But it would be worth finding out a bit more about the vaccine and perhaps not letting fear keep you from being safe.
So we need to build the public confidence. We need to be as transparent as we can be. We've seen two reactions in the UK with those health workers who we know have a medical history of allergies.
Yes.
So the UK is now saying if you do have allergic reactions to food, vaccines, and medicines, please stay off for now.
Yes.
And you're totally correct. But, you know, we also understand that the cure to this pandemic is the vaccine. So we have to also bear the balance between safety, the benefits, and the risks.
Right.
I would take a vaccine, but I won't jump the queue.
Yeah, I'll let a few 100,000 people take it first. See how they do, and then I'll take mine.
Yes, that's my way to go.